Good afternoon. This is Ronnie Sirkinia, the Wandering Musician. Today I'll be focusing on my week 4 video reflection. It's gonna be based on my field observation at Tulare Western High School. Mr. Reynolds, the band director, allowed me to observe his mariachi class. So just a little background. So basically, the students. So it's basically a 2 day lesson. Basically, the students were watching a documentary called Going Varsity and Mariachi, Netflix documentary. So I missed day one, but majority of day one was basically they were watching the film, and day two is basically a continuation of watching the film and the discussion parts and their activities. So here we go. So just to give a little synopsis of the film, it's basically regarding a small mariachi band called Mariachi del Oro, based on a poorly funded school in Edinburgh, Texas. The director in that film is Abel Acuna. He was responsible for coaching and leading the mariachi group to the state championships, while showcasing their talents and against their competitors. And basically, the biggest themes in this documentary was their adversity, their hard work, and their cultural pride. For this reflection, I'll be focusing on the literacy theories of content literacy in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So, the content literacy, I didn't really see any content literacy, and only because there was not any reading materials given. But I do want to comment is that Mr. Reynolds provided a questionnaire worksheet, which is one in English and one in Spanish, due to having two EL students in his class. So whenever they had the group discussions, these EL students will be grouped with students that are bilingual and are also their more knowledgeable other, if that makes sense. All right. So I can't really comment much of the reading, but I'm going to go ahead and go transition to content literacy and writing. So while the students were watching the film and continuation of day one and going to day two, so Mr. Reynolds has basically had the students take notes while they're doing the documentary, and I feel it was very effective. And it's because it not only keeps them engaged and active in the learning, but they're also to recall information during the upcoming group discussions, and they were able to write up their responses to their assigned worksheet and more thoughtfully. And the note taking also helps the students process their thoughts and writing their responses more meaningfully. So for instance, as I looked through one of the students' notes, one of the things that she shared, she wrote extensively on Mr. Acuna, the protagonist of the film. Basically, utilizes students' culture, pride, and identity to provide intrinsic motivation to do their best. Other things that she stated was basically that it doesn't matter if their school was fully or poorly funded and provided equipment for their class. All it comes down to is their dedication to having good ethics and being dedicated to the group. Mr. Cunha, and then the student also stated that he also made a lot of connections that Edinburgh is a border town between Texas and Mexico, which also represent their identity. The majority of Mexican Americans, and especially the immigrants in that area as well, and then representing the cultural identities of the pride of the raza. Basically, raza is just a Spanish slur, or I don't want to say slur. I forgot the part of that language, but anyways, slang. That's what I was looking for. The slang is basically the pride of the Mexican heritage raza. Okay, just want to put that out. And then but also that student made that connection with the documentary and the community of Tulare, which is also full of Mexican Americans and immigrants as well. And then that community of Tulare is also a farm community with migrant workers working in that area. So it also to make those connections. Yeah, and that type of interaction with the writing portion is what made the lesson effective, reflected content standards, and the lesson objectives. The next I want to go ahead and talk about is the content literacy in speaking and listening. I'm not going to talk about that separately because what was going on to these group discussions, actually the speaking and listening kind of went hand in hand. So during the group discussions, Mr. Reynolds made the content literacy and speaking and listening very effective, which became very supplemental to answering the questions from the documentary questionnaire. Basically tying back to one of the students who spoke eloquently from previously what I said earlier, back to hard work and dedication and how it goes, how that can be hand in hand when it comes to winning competitions, the things that the marching band would do. And yes, it is tying back to the mariachi class, but the student that spoke eloquently also happens to be in the marching band class as well, tying it to competition. Let's see, what are the themes? The content literacy and speaking just became very secondary and complementary, and most of the students were engaged and they were flowing. Just for the most part, the students were very intent in listening to the peers, and that's very impressive because that type of impact to influence their peers to share their opinions, and everyone listening very attentively to their peers. It kind of created like a sense of synergy, right? Synergy, having that I just feel like synergy is like very contagious, right? It's just basically like a hierarchy. You influence one, you kind of spark the influence of others to do the same. Synergy. So like going back to that, but it's also impressive seeing that from a high school student for them to do that, right? And I also seen that the student that spoke very eloquently made that student an effective leader, and sparking conversations that go beyond the content of the lesson is every teacher and administrator's dream, right? But you typically don't see that. But however, continuing further, yeah. But during this observation time, you also have these students that are being disruptive or making irrelevant comments that has nothing to do with the assignment, but it is what it is. I mean, you're always gonna have behaviors. But regardless, I also like Mr. Reynolds called out on those students tactfully without humiliating, and address those students with those behaviors, and without making a scene or degrading them at all. And the students, out of respect, they did respected him and made that course correction. But yeah, so that's pretty much my experience from that for that field observation. Yeah, so that gives me a lot to think about when creating these group discussions in my classroom, especially when I'm teaching middle schoolers. It's going to be a real huge of a challenge. It's going to require a lot of scaffolding, a lot of procedurals, having the students speak and then they share. But yeah, when you're having it into groups, especially with that grade level, it'll be a challenge. But hey, I think this is more appropriate for high school, but maybe it could be possible in my classroom. But anyways, thank you for listening. Again, have a good day, and thank you for listening to my reflective video for week 4 for my ITL class 520. All right, peace out. Bye bye.